Now take you to the University of Ghana, Legon, where there's the launch of the State of Ghanaian Media Report by the Department of Communication Studies of the University of Ghana.
The process of establishing an African Center for Informal Engagement and Climate Change Education under the proposed University of Ghana Climate Collaborative to be sponsored by the MasterCard Foundation. In addition, the college has put together a committee to establish research and surveillance sites across the country. Although these sites will mainly monitor educational outcomes, media research will also feature prominently. We are convinced that today would not only serve as a forum for the launch of this report, but also serve as a launch pad for broader and extensive discussions on best practices to enhance the media and facilitate a vibrant and truly democratic ecosystem. I thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you very much, Provost. I think we can do better with a clap, please. Thank you very much, sir, for those kind words. There's one thing that I noted, is that his hope is that the report is going to alter the Ghanaian media landscape and how we do our things within the media. Ladies and gentlemen, on this note, I would like to call on Dr. Enimwa Abnayebua Benin. She is the head of department for the Department of Communication Studies. Doug?
When your student from not so long ago decides to butcher your name, you wish you were maybe JHS so that you can cane her. Good morning. I think I would be fine if I stand on the protocols established by the provost. And so let me say welcome to all of you. We're very, very honored and happy to have you all with us. And that also goes to those watching us live on the JoyNews channel and on the Facebook page of that same channel, as well as the department's Facebook page. For us at the Department of Communication Studies, ladies and gentlemen, today's event is a key milestone in our 50th anniversary celebrations. If you were unable to join us during the launch of the celebrations in July last year, let me usurp the position of the Anniversary Planning Committee co-chairpersons and say welcome and thank you. We're happy to have you celebrate our 50th with us. It's been 50 years of our unique and enviable, I dare say, story of excellence in communication, scholarship, and training. Of this, we remain very proud. But it is this same position that challenges us to continue to be the standard bearer of excellence in media and communication scholarship and training. Our theme for the celebration called attention to the need to reimagine the field of media and communication training and practice, given the changing dynamics and demands of the times. New technologies and other evolutions have drastically changed media and communication industries and ecosystems everywhere, calling into question established models of pedagogy, of practice, and of success. Today, information is no longer the preserve of the few, as used to be the case, nor is it the opportunity to monetize that information or to benefit from it. It is available to everyone, and everyone can take advantage. The fact that every citizen can be a media owner and a media gatekeeper just by starting a social media page or channel means that traditional media models of doing media, for instance, have changed. While these developments are positive for purposes of inclusiveness and citizen participation in the communication and news-making enterprise, they also challenge us in the mainstream media to more clearly distinguish ourselves professionally through training and practice. We have sought through our anniversary celebration to contribute to elevating Ghana's media and communication ecosystem. We have held a number of discussions, public discussions, including on communicating development beyond the politics, which you would all agree is what happens often in Ghana, and also on the implementation of the right to information law so far. Today, we draw attention to the health of the Ghanaian media, something that is of concern to us, not only because the media industry is a primary career destination for our students. We believe that across societies and organizations that have progressed, routine introspection is a critical ingredient for self-renewal. From annual general meetings, management review meetings, to the State of the Nation address delivered by the President every year, such introspection is quite commonplace and enables stock-taking while providing baseline evidence upon which to set targets for improvements. When it comes to the media sector, however, often such self-checks are lacking. Comments about the health of the Ghanaian media are often anecdotal or opinion-based and therefore open to debate. And debate is one thing we know how to do a lot of in Ghana, especially on the airwaves. Where they exist, reliable empirics tend to come from external sources, such as, you would know, the World Press Freedom Index by Reporters Without Borders. Or they would come from one-off studies by individual academics and institutions. And yet, I would argue, it is for the media that the imperative of such empirics-based introspection is most critical. For the sector that holds the key to free expression, to public opinion formation, and to national mobilizing and collective action, regular and periodic research that presents evidence is critical. I think it is also long overdue. Today, we partner the Media Foundation for West Africa to present the State of the Ghanaian Media Report as an attempt to correct this dearth in empirical evidence that helps us all to pursue improvements in the media industry and landscape. As new configurations provoke new questions and challenge old assumptions about media industries and practices, we attempt through the State of the Ghanaian Media Report to answer questions about the financial viability of the media and how this feeds into, for instance, working conditions in the media as well as professional practices. The report we share with you today has 7 chapters. There is one on media and national development, media freedom and professional journalism practices, financial viability of the media, working conditions in the media, the safety of journalists in Ghana, training and capacity building of media practitioners, and lastly but not least, broadcast media ownership and regulation. That one is a heavy one. You should read it. Across these chapters, we present what we believe to be compelling evidence for an urgent need for reforms in the Ghanaian media. I will not jump the gun and share the insights in the report. We have, the respected Professor Odrigajeko here to do that for us. But I should be well within protocol if I state that Ghana's media needs help. Ghana's media needs help, and urgently too. Our hope at the Department of Communication Studies, and I guess it's the same for the Media Foundation for West Africa, is that stakeholders who stand at the crossroads of policy and power will take up the findings in this report and use them to drive improvements in the media. And that is why we are particularly grateful that key stakeholders in the media are present. I've seen regulators, I've seen GIBA president is here. We're very happy to have you all here because you need to be part of this conversation. Ghana's democracy needs a strong and vibrant media. We seem to be doing very well as a country on the vibrant. What we are not doing too good on is strong media. We think the report presents all media stakeholders with opportunity to make the media strong too, so they can deliver on their mandate. And so we call on all such stakeholders, policymakers and actors, media owners, media managers, media practitioners, professional and other industry associations, training institutions, civil society, indeed all Ghanaians. This is about us. Ghana's media is about our future. And so we call on all stakeholders to join in making this report matter. Let us work with it to pursue reforms in the media. The department hopes to do this every 3 years, and we look to doing this with key partners. We call on these partners to support us, finance especially. As you would imagine, part of the reason such reports are lacking in Ghana is the resource required for carrying it through. For this edition, therefore, we are very grateful to the U.S. Embassy in Accra and the College of Education, University of Ghana, for supporting us with the requisite finances and logistics. The research reported in the State of the Ghanaian Media Report has taken us across the country to engage individuals and organizations who share their experiences and perspectives with us. Thank you. Thank you very much, all those who shared their experiences with us. Allow me to also express our deepest appreciation to our media partners. So we are carrying this live on JoyNews channel because JoyNews is partnering us on this journey. The Ghana Broadcasting Corporation is also giving us way more than we could have afforded in doing this. Peace FM, Class FM, all media houses here represented. If you are here, it tells us that you consider what we are doing to be important. And we're very grateful that you are doing this together with us. But I have a message. The job is not done. We're only now starting it. Indeed, the bigger hurdle is encouraging uptake and action on the findings in the report. We look forward to more support from all of you to enable us deepen understanding of the findings in the report and also to explore solution pathways. Often, the media is busy talking about everyone else's business. Now is the time to focus our cameras on us. Let us talk about the media in Ghana. It is time for us to set the agenda on the media to inspire much-needed reforms in the media landscape. We're very grateful also to all of you who are joining us today and those with us online and on TV. It is very encouraging to know that there is interest in this endeavor. So before I sit down, a quick word also to thank once again the U.S. Embassy and the College of Education for giving us what we needed to push us in doing this. Faculty at the Department of Communication Studies, this has taken a toll, and I'm very happy that we all worked together to let it come into being. It needed to come into being. Planning Committee, 50th anniversary. This one, it is your show. Thank you. Thank you very much. Staff of the department, our students, our alumni, anybody who has anything to say about a connection with the Department of Communication Studies, UG, this is our thank you. We really look forward to this report making a difference in the lives of people working within the media, and also in how the media is able to contribute to Ghana's development. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Dr. Abna Enimwa Yeboah Benin. Ladies and gentlemen, a program such as this couldn't have happened or be made possible without the support of some institutions or some individuals. As has been reiterated earlier, this program is made possible with support from the U.S. Embassy and the College of Education here at the University of Ghana. In view of this, we would like to take brief statements from their representative. I'd like to call on Madam Nicole Anchulik, who is the Deputy Chief Mission of the U.S. Embassy here in Ghana. With a round of applause, let's welcome her.
Good morning, everyone. I too will stand on the protocols observed by the Provost. Thank you. It's great to be here to celebrate the publication of this report, and even more important that it marks the 50th anniversary of the School of Communications. Congratulations. The U.S. Embassy supported this project because a free, fair, professional, and responsible media is critical to democracy in Ghana and around the world. The report is an example of how to promote such an environment. It gives you a transparent accounting of the state of the media in Ghana to inform policymakers and practitioners. The United States is an ardent supporter of press freedom because we know personally what the world looks like without press freedom. Such a world loses connection to the truth and is influenced by those with, shall we say, less than democratic motives. Such a world ignores the voices of the people and concentrates power with a very few. Thomas Jefferson once said that he would prefer newspapers without government over a government without newspapers. Those words are still true, although maybe we'd switch it to social media rather than newspapers. A modern professional journalism corps contributes to lively and fact-based policy debates. Without an independent and vibrant media, those debates quickly devolve into squabbles. And that's not what we need to make important policy decisions today. Independent media allows a competition of ideas on which any democracy can thrive. So what do we need to do to support press freedom and a vibrant media environment? Well, first, we need strong protections for journalists. That's not to say that journalists can do anything they want or say anything they want. Just that there must be strong safeguards to protect free speech above all things, and then appropriate legal recourse for when journalists do not speak the truth. That's exactly what effective civil liability laws can do. We also need professional journalists, like those that are being trained here every year. Professional journalists need to be treated fairly, trained well, and informed about the legal restrictions like libel laws and the role of ethics in modern journalism. Part of supporting professional journalism also means supporting appropriate pay for those reporters, including women. To effectively contribute to democracy's development, journalists ask tough questions. And I see it. I see it on the news. I see it on social media. I see it in the newspapers. You ask tough questions about government priorities. And then the fact-based reporting that you produce means the public can play an active role in policy. Just like the United States, Ghana has a law that, if it is effectively implemented, can facilitate quality journalism, the Right to Information Law. This law is already helping Ghanaian journalists and community leaders gather crucial information from local authorities, government agencies, and the national government. This flow of information is also critical for public policy decision-making. As we learned in the United States with our own Freedom of Information Act, sometimes shining a light or sunshine is the best disinfectant. And if you let me continue with that, that light will hold government accountable and fight corruption. I know that the State of the Ghanaian Media Report being released today will touch on many of these issues. And I hope the report serves as a catalyst for media houses, universities, media support organizations, and governments to ensure that we all support a professional, responsible, and accountable media here in government. As the professor said, the job is not yet done. This report is the first step. Thank you.
Thank you. Another round of applause, please. Thank you very much. And that was Madam Nicole Anchilik, Deputy Chief of Mission, U.S. Embassy. You just realized my English language changed. Yes, because I think I've been influenced. Thank you very much, Madam. Okay, so the other institution who has supported this program or initiative is the Media Foundation for West Africa. And I believe you all gathered here know the work that Media Foundation for West Africa has been doing as regards the freedom and the well-being of the media in Ghana and in West Africa. On this note, I'd like to call on Mr. Suleimana Brahima, who is the Executive Director of the Media Foundation for West Africa. A round of applause for him, please.
Thank you very much. Allow me to also stand on existing protocols and to say good morning to all of you and to thank you very much for coming. Now, around the world today, as we might all know, democracy is under severe threat as a result of rising authoritarian rule, populist ideologies, and extremist beliefs. One of the most obvious manifestations of the threat to democracy is the increasing spate of media oppression and the challenge to media sustainability globally. This is because one of the clearest symptoms of a sick democracy is an oppressed media ecosystem. As we aspire to continue to build and strengthen Ghana's democracy, it is therefore important to routinely examine the state of the Ghanaian media. This is because I believe the strength and well-being of our democracy largely depends on the health of our media. So when tendencies of media oppression and other challenges that undermine media freedom and sustainability become manifest in our country, I believe that we should all be getting worried that perhaps our democracy is getting sick. But the surest way to know the true state of our media is to have a thorough scientific study of the media sector in Ghana. And this is particularly so because over the last 3 decades of our Fourth Republic, we have moved from one radio station, GBC, to, as at the end of 2022, 513 radio stations on air. Similarly, we have moved from one television station, GBC, to 103 television channels as at the end of last year. We have also moved from a period of no Facebook, no Twitter, no TikTok, to having over 10 million of our citizens online daily engaging within the media sphere. And with this kind of environment, we certainly cannot continue to live in an unexamined or far less examined media system. And this is why the Media Foundation for West Africa is delighted to have jointly initiated this project with the Department of Communication Studies of the University of Ghana my alma mater, to assess the state of the Ghanaian media, to identify existing strengths that we can leverage on and weaknesses that we need to collectively work on to improve the state of the Ghanaian media. This is one of the surest ways of strengthening and consolidating our democracy, and one of the best ways of enhancing our capacity as a nation to robustly withstand the turbulent shocks from the ongoing tendencies of democratic recession, not just in our region, but globally. Together, I believe we can do more to strengthen the Ghanaian media and to enable them to continue to play the role that they have to play as the lifeblood of our democracy. Indeed, as they say, when the media die, democracy dies. I would wish to end by expressing my profound gratitude to the Embassy of the United States in Ghana for funding this initiative, and also for the extraordinary leadership and support of the United States government to media freedom work, press freedom work, media sustainability work here in Ghana, across West Africa where we work, and indeed around the world. And I believe that together with the support of the embassy and the United States government and other governments that appreciate the value of press freedom and media sustainability, we can do more to improve our ecosystem here in Ghana, across West Africa, across Africa, and indeed around the world. I would also want to thank the College of Education of the University of Ghana for supporting this initiative. Once again, I thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Mr. Suleimana Brahma, the Executive Director of Media Foundation for West Africa, our partner for this event. Indeed, when the media die, democracy also die. And together, we need to come up with ways that the media can also grow, ways that the media can be proactive. On this note, ladies and gentlemen, I would like to call on Mr. Kofi Akpabli to introduce to us our keynote speaker. But before then, may I remind you that we are live on JoyNews TV and then on their Facebook channel. We are also live on GTV. So, Mr. Kofi Akpabli, kindly do us the honors by introducing our keynote speaker for today. A round of applause for him.
Thank you. I have a stalker alert. This distinguished gentleman I'm about to introduce, I want everyone to know that immediately we finish this program, I'll be following him into his office. Not too long ago, he and I met in Rwanda, where we had very interesting tea and coffee experiences. In spite of that, he kept telling me, Kofi, when we come to Accra, come to my office. I'll give you more tea and coffee. Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, Professor Amin Al-Hassan, PhD, is the Director General of the GBC. He is a development communication expert and a faculty member of the University for Development Studies, where he served as Dean of Faculty and later campus principal. He has previously worked with GBC Radio News and the Ghana News Agency after graduating from the Ghana Institute of Journalism. Professor Al-Hassan has master's and doctoral degrees in communication studies from Tampere University in Finland and Concordia University in Montreal. He has lectured at the International School of Social Science in Finland, McGill University in Montreal, and York University in Toronto. In 2012, Professor Al-Hassan resigned his position at York University to take up lectureship position at the University for Development Studies Nyankpala campus. Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, may I present to you your keynoter, Professor Amin Al-Hassan.
Thank you for the generous introduction. And it has almost become a routine for me to also say that I want to stand on the established protocols. It is a very fine arrangement. It works very well. Because if I have to acknowledge which of my friends is here, I will spend my whole time acknowledging that. And since we don't have a chair for the occasion, may I start by addressing the provost of the college. When I was invited to be the keynote speaker, and I was only told that, Ghana's liberalized media, 30 years on, what does the future hold? I said, okay. The State of the Media Report will be telling us what it is happening now. I am supposed to be the soothsayer to tell what the future holds. And I'm delighted to have listened to especially the presentation from Mr. Brima from the Media Foundation, touching on the very subject I would have touched if I wasn't given a topic, and the presentation by the American Embassy Deputy Chief of Mission. Indeed, it has been 30 years since Chapter 12 of the 1992 Constitution inaugurated a new paradigm of media systems in Ghana. Before then, like we have told before, Ghana had only one broadcasting organization to provide one TV channel, 2-channel radio for the whole country, a few number of newspaper publications, and majority of them being Lotto publications. Sometimes it's good to remind ourselves of these stories for the younger generations to know where we came from. The infamous newspaper licensing law, PNDC Law 211, 1989, under which the equivalent of a Minister of Information of the then government had the singular power to give you a license to publish or not to publish a newspaper. The political public sphere then dried up of discourse, and a culture of silence enveloped civil society. Funeral grounds provided a space that approximated a public sphere for critical discourse of public nature. It was against this backdrop of a state-dominated national space that Chapter 12 was crafted as part of the 1992 Fourth Republican Constitution. Now that the Constitution did, what the Constitution did was to allow for a free press. We now know what it looks like. Anyone can publish without being granted a license. You can set up a TV or radio station as you like without hindrance, except that if you choose, and this is very important to know, if you choose to go on a platform which is controlled by the NCA, you will need to apply to them. And this distinction is very important. You don't need any permission provided the platform is not under the jurisdiction of the NCA. If it is, then you have to apply to them. There's an attempt to muddy the water on this distinction. It's very important. So not a license, but an NCA can give you an allocated channel to broadcast. In retrospect, we can argue that whilst the authors of our Constitution gave us the best constitutional guarantees for free media freedoms, that is unmatched in the whole of Africa. And I repeat that. Ghana's constitutional guarantees for media freedoms is unmatched in the entire continent. They could not foresee the future of the media landscape we are dealing with, or short, the mediascape. They could not imagine the future of television, of digital terrestrial television, of direct-to-home satellite television. They could not imagine web TV, They could not imagine the power of convergence to transform the boundaries of media technologies into media technoscapes. So they carved out a role and office for the National Media Commission. I should acknowledge the presence of the NMC Executive Secretary, who happens to be my employer. So it's good I acknowledge. So they carved out a role and office for the NMC and structured the membership to make it independent. However, the functions of the NMC was to focus on mass communication, on mass media. Given where we've come from as a country, it was expected that the focus could have been on mass media, okay. But in retrospect, the Constitution should have structured the functions of the NMC to be about media and communication, and not mass media and mass communication. And the focus was to protect citizens from the state. It could have been better in retrospect. We got our Constitution in 1992, and 3 years later, the world experienced what I call the Big Bang in telecommunication. The global mainstreaming of digital telephony occurred in 1995. And in 1996, we in Ghana also established the National Communication Authority to supervise the regulation of our telecommunication system, and for the to replace the frequency board. But more importantly, it was to become the regulator of the new telecom market. It appeared that did not concern the NMC, but as I'll be showing, it is very much an issue of media regulation, not just telecom market. It will appear that the mandate of both the NMC and the NCA were well defined by the media technoscapes of 2 decades of the 1990s and the 2000s. But in the last 2 decades, technological convergence and the fantastic digital dividend has muddled the waters that allow for a fine distinction between the remit of the NMC and that of the NCA. Given the backdrop of culture of silence and the reign of terror against the media in the pre-1992 period, it is understandable that any idea of content regulation was shunned. In fact, we would have cringed if any idea of that sort came up. But after 30 years, we are now realizing that we need to have a free and, importantly as well, a responsible media. And that is why the subject of content regulation must be broached. Every democracy I know in the world have a form of regulation that will sanitize the media environment. And in recent times, we have had to deal with excesses that kept the good people of Ghana looking up to the NMC to take action, while the NMC looked on helplessly because they don't have that mandate. Apart from its direct oversight responsibility over state-owned media, the NMC is simply a forum for arbitration, a kind of ADR if you like. But it should have been more. We have had really a free regime for the past 30 years. It is my view that for us to go into the next 30 years, we will need a kind of content regulation of a sort, not a type that will be subject to political abuse, but a type that will keep the media in check. Content regulation is becoming even more important because of the increasing ability to weaponize information. Content regulation is not about censorship in the way we experienced it before. It is to acknowledge the fact that the nation state is a democracy as well as a community of values. In all these conversations about the media ecosystem for the next 30 years, It is all about a magic word called convergence. Technological convergence is simply about the synergistic effect that arises out of the interface of two or more systems. For instance, way back in 1995, when the world mainstreamed the idea of analog telecommunication systems being migrated into digital, it was not to affect telecommunication alone. It was to transform broadcasting as we knew it then. Here in Ghana, in 2007, when GBC engineers were confronted with this task, they were debating whether we should adopt a DTT system or a DTH system. The difference is simple. Digital terrestrial television system is simply based on the land. So it is within the country's borders. You can control it. But direct-to-home television is from satellite to home. So you can control DTT 100%. With direct-to-home, it sits outside. It can be sitting outside your borders or inside your borders, but it will hit the home of everybody who has the set to receive it. Through convergence, both DTT and DTH have merged. And when you are home and you are running through your TV channels, you won't even know whether you are watching a direct-to-home channel or a DTT. But when the question confronted the country then, we said because of national sovereignty, we'll go for digital terrestrial television. We did that. Now, I will illustrate one example why this conversation matters. About 2 years ago, up in Tamale, after the evening prayers, I engaged the imam in the chat. Then all of a sudden he told me that, oh, it's time for Kevin Taylor. I'm running home. I said, you have Kevin Taylor on your TV? He said, yes. At that time, I could only access Kevin Taylor on the internet. I didn't know that DTH, Kevin Taylor, was entering Ghanaian homes. I went home, scanned my TV, and there it was, free to my house. I came back to Accra, scanned, it was there. And I remember sending a text message and a screenshot to a very important regulator. All he said was, wow. They commissioned the NCA to find a way to stop Kevin Taylor. They tracked him down. Kevin Taylor went to Nigeria and got a satellite company whose footprint covers Ghana, and currently he's broadcasting to Ghana. So, nowhere, you can't get him. If you get him in Nigeria, he'll move to Senegal, because there are satellites whose footprint covers Ghana. These are issues that when you look at how do we address this, what is missing is that in Ghana, we don't have a comprehensive regulatory system which empowers a regulator like NCA to invite you, and when you refuse, they can then track you down. So if you are in any ECOWAS or African country, we can legitimately ask that country to take you off, and they will act. But currently, as it is, NCA is at its wit's end about how to deal with this issue, because the law doesn't permit them to go beyond what they have done. NMC doesn't have the power to go for Kevin Taylor. We are opened. It's open season for reckless and irresponsible journalism. It is my view that the absence of legislative instrument to enforce content regulation makes it impossible for us as a country to develop protocols for engaging sub-regional partners to enforce regulatory decisions. It is, if I am denied authorization, I can move to other places and get. We spent 20 years holding a broadcasting bill without passing it into law. And today, the bill is dead. The content of the bill is moribund. It doesn't respond to the new media ecosystem. In fact, we have to draft the bill entirely new. So that issue is something that we need to confront as media scholars. what is the nature of the media regulation that we are, content regulation that we are talking about? One doesn't transfer power into any political group to misbehave, but one that gives us a responsible media system, because we are a nation of values. Another game changer in the increasing reliance on electronic media is about the increasing power of telecom networks over broadcasting, be they DTT or DTH. Increasingly, broadcasting networks depend on telco networks for signal transmission. In fact, as I sit here, Vodafone has the power to terminate transmission on GBC systems without notice. We can't sit quietly and let this power go unchecked. They have the power to do that because our signal transmissions goes through their network. So increasingly, we should have to confront the fact that telecom networks are becoming foundational to broadcasting. Besides this development, the emergence of OTT over-the-top platforms, the increasing dependence on apps for news, and the entertainment delivery are all pointing to one direction. Online systems will be defining our media consumption lifestyle for a long time to come. And it is probably this trend that made the Director General of the BBC, Tim Davie, to recently say that very soon BBC will do online broadcasting only. No satellite, no DTT, just exclusively online. While this prediction might be very overly futuristic, what this tells us is that in the next 30 years, the telecom network will become more important to broadcasting than the frequencies that the NCA allocates for TV and radio. And as newspapers continue to migrate from hard copy to online, they are also going to need the power of telco for circulation. Every broadcast system manager knows that the most expensive operational cost is platform transmission fees. To be on the direct to home, fees range from $3,500 US to $5,000 a month. Starting from this month, we are told platform fees for the national DTT is $10,000 US a month. Giba, have you heard me? Meanwhile, telecommunication networks are penetrating hinterlands of the country with 4G or better transmission power, with better capacity to transmit content on DTT and on better than DTT and DTH. The picture I have been painting out clearly points to access to media being dependent on access to telco network. Media is about content distribution, and if telcos know their networks are the backbone of media transmission, they will find a profitable venture into content distribution. Or have they not already started? Have you downloaded Ayoba yet? Ayoba was the most advertised product during the recent World Cup. But try it and see what Ayoba is. Ayoba is an app on your phone. It can give you more channels than the national DTT. Okay, it can give you everything you want about media. Entertainment, news, movies, games, everything, that app. Now, that is not the problem, really. The problem is that it's owned by MTN. And for that reason, they assure you, unlike other apps, when you download Ayoba, it will not take your data. That is the problem. It is not the app that is the problem. It is this aspect. Because in several European countries, it would have been illegal for that app to be advertised as such. Because it is unfair competition. You can own the network and grant free ride for those who have your app and charge data for other apps. And here again, I'm expecting GIBA to pay attention to this development. In other jurisdictions, the competition laws will not allow it. But when you read Ghana's anti-competition laws, it is not about media. In fact, the history of our law had to do with TRIPS, World Trade Organization, intellectual property. When we were about to sign on, we were told we didn't have the law. We should come and craft it. So when you read that law, it's all about trademarks and patents and other things. We are saying that you can own a network and also do media business. Facebook, YouTube, and other social apps are all grossing today more revenue than legacy media. They don't have overhead costs for production because they have outsourced production costs to the social networks. And that is the point about why the dwindling fortunes of legacy media in advertising revenue predicts doom, whilst social media systems are on the rise. Their advertising revenue is on the rise. But they have a different production model. So this is the crux of the political economy of the new media. What are the implications that must be of concern to media scholars? The political economy of new media poses a real existential threat to legacy media. And let me hazard a prediction. Any legacy media that does not reposition itself as a social media channel should not be up and standing 5 years from now. Legacy media systems are literally dinosaurs unless they adopt to the production and economic logic of new media. But the trouble here is for us as scholars. The concern is that one of the logics of the legacy of the social media is clicks. Create a story, whether true or not. By the time it's even established that it's a lie, you would have harvested enough money through that. An example was recently when we had a story that a secondary school in Tamale had converted toilet into dormitories. Immediately I saw it, I laughed, I said, that is a lie. And I still stand by it. It has to do with the history, the architecture that Kwame Nkrumah used to do the 1960 schools. That very structure, you will find it in Accra Girls, just around Nima, Kaokudi. You will find it in my own school, Navron Secondary School. And I spent 5 years in one of them. They built these things with water closet systems, but they never provided water, pipe-borne water to flow into the campus. So we're having boreholes, so you have to take your bucket, go to the borehole, fetch water, and come and bath. So we didn't have the luxury of water closets, but the buildings were designed with water closets. So we converted the toilets into cubicles for the seniors. So when we're in the senior class, you go and take one of them and put a chair there, and that if you want some quiet to study without being disturbed, you go in there and study. And periodically, you carry your mattress from your dormitory and put by your table. When you are tired, you rest. These toilets were not used as toilets. They were constructed as toilets, but they were not used. Even those who use them have dormitory space as they have, but it is just a privilege to be assigned those spaces. So when I saw this, I said, oh, but why would they do that story? But before I realized, GES was taking a decision based on that. I said, oh, no, that can't be true. They are now establishing that it was a lie. But guess what? In the new media model, it's a bonanza. It was, if I were the editor of that forum, I will give the reporter some bonus. Because the clicks that he will bring, maybe by the time we stop it, about $1,000 will fall into their bank account. And that is good journalism according to the logic of the new media. But you and me will tell you that, look, this can be accepted. This is the kind of logic that we should be concerned about. How do we address these issues? So we have to think about new regulatory measures and legal frameworks that can be put in place to allow legacy media also draw premium from the social media aggregators without necessarily running the logic of the new media model. A lot of the social media aggregators do not produce content on their own. They aggregate. It's a concern for GBC, so lately I've turned myself into a legal scholar and I've been digging through, consulting various legal opinions about it. And it's becoming very clear that if 2 or 3 legacy media organizations go to court, we can get a judgment that requires that if you take my content and you put on your website, I should be able to get some of the revenue. And I've been told it's a clear case, it's a possibility, so I will be consulting some of my colleagues to see how we could pursue that option. Because the logic in the new media is not conducive for the type of journalism that we want to keep. Now, I cannot complete my presentation here without a word about public media. Public service media. As everyone becomes a publisher, too many, we heard from Mr. Bremer the number of channels, even on legacy media. We've seen the online the explosion of the media. In all of these, we've also seen a growth in what we call fake news. We've seen the growth in the weaponization of simple content. We've seen a growth in disinformation and misinformation. In all of these, every democracy worth its salt should have a media of reference, a media of last resort, a media that should be protected from running through the market like the others, so that we have a media of reference. And that is the basis and justifications for public service media. That is why the British have cherished the BBC, and that is why the Australians have cherished the ABC, and that is why the Canadians have cherished the CBC. All the democracies you can think of, we want to be like. Here in Ghana, we need to understand part of a cure for a sick democracy, as Sule has outlined, is to ensure that your public service media is well funded. And for us in Ghana here, the closest approximation to this is the Ghana Broadcasting Corporation. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Professor Amin Al-Hassan, the Director General of Ghana Broadcasting Corporation. Thank you for those kind words. Indeed, we need a free and responsible media in Ghana. On this note, I would like to acknowledge the presence of some dignitaries amongst us, and in no particular order. Dr. Ekospio Gabra. He is the former Minister of Education and an alumnus of the Department of Communication Studies. You are welcome, sir. We have Professor Kwame Kalkari, the founder, Media Foundation for West Africa. And we have Dr. Bombay Kumsin, who is formerly of the Department of Communication Studies. Bona, okay, please. Please, pardon me. Mr. Bona Kumsin, we sincerely apologize for the mispronunciation of your name. Okay. Ladies and gentlemen, we would also like to acknowledge the presence of Mr. Samson Ladi Ayenini. We have also Mr. George Sapon of the NMC. Please, you can give us a wave, please. We have Dr. Charity Benka, who is a board chair of Pen Plus Byte and also the executive director of WOMEC. Dr. Charity Benka, if you are here, please give us a wave. We have reps from the Canadian Embassy. Madam Joyce. Hello. We also have Madam Precious Ankuma, who is a senior programs officer at Pen Plus Byte, our partner. Madam Precious, thank you for coming. We have Manasi Awini, and then reps from the Ministry of Communication. We also have reps from UNESCO. UNESCO, are you here? Can we please see you? Thank you very much for coming. And reps from the Ministry of Communication and Digitalization. Thank you very much for representing. Okay. So I would like to remind you that this is the launch of the State of the Ghanaian Media Report, and we are live on JoyNews and GTV. We are also streaming live on Facebook at JoyNews. At this juncture, ladies and gentlemen, I think we've heard a lot from practitioners in the field of media, and we would also like to hear from students who are in communication studies or in various media schools who are yet to come into the industry to have a feel of what it takes or what it means to work within the media landscape in Ghana. And I think this is very important because we need to know what they think and know how we strategize to ensure that Ghana's media also thrives. On this note, ladies and gentlemen, we would like to watch a video from students of communication studies. Thank you.
It's okay, it's okay. They've turned the projector off. The projector is...
Imagine a family without a home. Imagine a song without a voice. Imagine a church without prayers.
Academic institutions. Another aspect I would love to see functioning is when women in the media space are empowered and trained to specialize professionally. Thank you.
I want to work in a media space where technological innovations are embraced, where the social and cultural backgrounds of individuals are properly respected and reflected, and a media space which reflects the honest views of the people rather than the views of those in power.
Oftentimes, some of the journalists and media practitioners involved in bribery, corruption, and self-censorship just because they are paid poorly. So, a media ecosystem I envisage or I envision is one that pays their practitioners very well.
As I complete school, I look forward to enter into the media space. I look forward to see a decency of discourse on the various media platforms. This is because there is no proper content regulation on the various media platforms.
I would want to work in a media environment that encourages and promotes gender equity, so that women do not have to spend so much time justifying their inclusion, but can channel that time and energy into being more productive for the good of society.
My idea of an ideal media is one that works with the local governance agencies. One that would partner with the local governance agencies to bring development to Ghanaians.
The current state of the Ghanaian media is one in which some journalists lack the skills and training to produce quality content for public consumption. My ideal media ecology is one in which the highest forms of ethics are applied in journalism.
I expect to see a media environment in Ghana where there is vibrancy, effectiveness, and efficiency. Howbeit, this effectiveness, efficiency, and vibrancy can only come about when there is a comprehensive legal framework governing activities within the industry. I know other people may argue about this, that there are sufficient laws to govern activities within the industry, but what is left is with implementation. In that case, I implore the regulators to carry out their responsibility in a way that will ensure that the ideal media environment is achieved in Ghana.
You've heard from students of the Department of Communication Studies and their aspirations for the media in Ghana. Now I would like to move on to get to know the overview of this report and to find out whether the aspirations that we all have is actually captured in this report, which is the launch of the State of the Ghanaian Media Report. I would like to call on Professor Audrey Gajepo, who is a former dean of the School of Information and Communication Studies and also a faculty member of the department and my former lecturer. Trust me, you can't be in Professor Gajepo's class and not know about Chapter 12. I heard someone mention, Professor Amin talked about Chapter 12. It almost became like a Bible in her class. Prof, you are welcome to the stage.
Thank you, Efia. And good morning, everybody. I'm also standing on the protocols already established, and we are waiting patiently for it to be projected. So, I want to start with media ownership. And so the key findings about media ownership have already been foreshadowed by earlier comments. I think the first thing that the report draws out is how opaque media ownership is. You'll be very hard-pressed to find out the actual persons behind certain media organizations. What you are going to find is the name of companies, and that masks the true picture of who owns media in Ghana. And it's a problem. It's a problem because when you dig a little bit deeper, whether through research or through anecdotal means, you will find out that there are political faces that lie behind the broadcast media ownership. So there's a certain political capture of our broadcast space by the dominant political parties in this country, and we should be worried about that. We also, the report also notes a certain growing tendency where we're getting what are media empires, you know, big media buying up media in other markets, in other regional markets, and the implications, therefore, is that we have partisan actors in our media space, and therefore these people can control our public discourse. Then the concentration of media with the media empire building also means that we're beginning to see media in fewer hands. And so we talk about media pluralism, but is it really pluralistic? What does pluralism mean? And when pluralism is not really pluralism, it doesn't serve the public interest very well. And the concern of those who wrote that chapter is the lack, the inertia of NCA when it comes to responding to some of these threats to a truly pluralistic and inclusive media environment. NCA seems unconcerned about the transparency issues in the media, in media ownership, and about the fact that media is increasingly being concentrated in few hands. And also, again, I think earlier comments noted that the broadcast regulation is non-existent. What exists right now really does not allow for accountability of those in power, because it's those in power who actually control the broadcast sector, and we should be worried about that. The next issue is financial viability of the media. The media, at the end of the day, is also a business. They need money to survive, to do quality programming, to do quality stories that are in the public interest. Particularly investigative reporting, we know, is expensive. Now, does the media in Ghana have the wherewithal to do that? The authors of the chapter, through their empirical research, because as you know, empirical research underpinned all of the findings that I'm sharing, they found out that most media organizations are not profitable in Ghana. At best, they're breaking even. And so they are under severe stress when it comes to financial viability. And part of that stress comes from big tech companies and from social media, as you know. And again, it has been mentioned already that advertising is moving from traditional media to social media, but not just advertising, audiences also. And then one big observation also is there's an oversaturation in the broadcast sector of media. Very crowded media markets. In Accra, in Ashanti region particularly, the media market is very crowded and oversaturated, again because NCA has no great plan to ensure the viability of media. And so they compete against each other, and it makes survival very, very difficult for them. There are statistics that you will find in the report. There's no time to go into that as well. And then, again, one of the stresses is COVID-19. And the report notes how COVID-19 had an effect on revenue for many media organizations and also led to job losses. Now, advertising traditionally is how legacy media is able to operate. It finances legacy media. Now, who are the advertisers? One of the surprises, at least for me, of the report was how heavily dependent traditional media is on the pharmaceutical sector, and in particular, herbal medicine. Yeah, and you can imagine the implications of that as well, because one of the things that the report notes is how the herbal medicine sector is one of the more poorly regulated sectors. So it calls into question whether the media can really hold accountable this sector, which really is in need of being held accountable. Then they found that digital technologies are changing the way media financing is taking place. It's putting that pressure on them, and that media are exploring. They're not just sitting there and doing nothing. Some of them are really very concerned about their sustainability. They are employing new business models. This includes, for example, digitization, conglomeration, which of course we've critiqued, but they are trying to become conglomerates so that their businesses can, I imagine, cross finance and make themselves stronger. Events marketing is also a way some of them are trying to survive. Even crowdfunding, and then a few of them, the report found, are also beginning to write grant proposals for support in order to survive. Now, working conditions in the media. Our MC, being somebody who works in the media, already started to note the difficulties in working in the media. And, reading that chapter, that you begin to see how precarious media work is in Ghana, which is shocking, considering that media work is formal work, and you don't expect formal work to be so precarious, but it is, for a number of reasons. One of the issues they found was poor recruitment practices, and then poor working conditions generally. Now, recruitment practices, one, like transparency, it tended to be who you knew, rather than a formal advertisement that will go out to say, we have this job available, and therefore it invites people to apply, and it becomes more meritocratic. And they also found out that how you came in determines your conditions of service. Who brought you in determines your conditions of service. Also, that many journalists work without contracts. This is a formal space, but many journalists work without contracts. There are no established structures for promotion, so it's not clear what will determine whether you'll be promoted or not. Again, it depends on the whim of the media manager, sometimes the media owner, and that sort of thing. And then, not surprisingly, because if you're the MC alluded to it, salaries are woefully low, shockingly low. The report, I said I wouldn't go into statistics, but I have to tell you, that sometimes as low as 500 CDs to 1,000 CDs a month. So the average, I think in that report that I read, was 1,000 CDs a month was what was going. 1,000 CDs a month for journalists. Some employees even work without pay for months. So you see, the issue of Solly then comes into question. And I do not like Solly. I do not think it should be justified, but you can see why that culture continues. Most media employees don't have some of the benefits in your average working workplace. So, for example, healthcare, very few media organizations offer healthcare to their workers. And then even when media work, as we will see from the chapter on safety for journalists, is very precarious also. Media work can be very unsafe, you know. But there's no counseling support for employees who experience trauma in the course of their work. So we come to safety of journalists. I mean, there's a growing sense of insecurity because of some of the things that Sule talked about in his presentation. So journalists feel insecure. They think that the environment they're working in is increasingly threatened. And so that there are violations to their safety, all kinds of violations. The report notes that even the violations are a little bit gendered. So male journalists are more at risk of physical attacks, as you can imagine, much more than female journalists. But then when it comes to online attacks, trolling, etc., it's the female journalists who suffer the most. And as you can imagine, investigative journalists are the most at risk. Who are the perpetrators? State actors, political appointees, the police security sector, national security forces tend to be the perpetrators of attacks. However, I think the report notes that a significant minority, almost 46%, of the attacks are by non-state actors, political fanatics, foot soldiers, thugs, sometimes business owners, sometimes churches, or church supporters, church, what are they called? Whatever. Social congregants, social media influencers, illegal miners, and then a surprise was fellow journalists, and that has to be explained. They were not talking about physical attacks, actually, although a fierce anecdote suggests that journalists are not above physical attacks on people, which again surprised me, but more verbal attacks where they attack themselves on their programs, they attack each other for one reason or the other. And so in that sense, journalists feel unsafe when their own colleagues are attacking them. And journalists perceive law enforcement agencies like the judiciary, for example, and the police, who are supposed to protect them, as not really looking out for them. However, I should end by saying the slight silver lining in these findings is the perception of a majority of journalists that the media landscape in Ghana is still makes it possible for them to work. They still feel they can criticize people in power and get away with it, and that they have, and that it is far better than the bad old days when we were under military dictatorship. Then media and national development. That chapter noted how important media is in national development, and the strong, I don't want if you have to laugh at me, but chapter 12 and how important chapter 12 and other legal provisions are to support media development. But then there are these tensions that the report notes between commercialization and the public interest coverage. So they're conscious that and all media, not just public media, not just the state media, all media subscribe to the need to support the national development in the kind of coverage that they provide. However, sometimes they have to do stories for commercial reasons rather than for national development. Education and health were one of the things that the authors looked at to determine how those are covered, and they are covered reasonably well. However, they found that where there are desks, specific dedicated desks to these two subject areas, then coverage tends to be much better. But the good thing is that the journalists themselves acknowledge that they could do much better than they're doing and aspire to do better. But they consider that, part of the problem is there's not enough funding, one, to do the kinds of stories that really support national development, but also it's not always easy to find credible sources, subject matter experts and professionals for those stories. Then we come to professional practice. How do journalists do their work? How do we see that relationship between the normative roles that journalists are expected to play and whether indeed they play it or not? And the findings suggest that they have a clear understanding of how important they are to democracy, to national development as journalists, and the roles that they have to play, the watchdog roles, the surveillance roles, and all of that. However, they also see that sometimes there's that disconnect between how they conceive their roles and how they perform. And there are all kinds of reasons for that. One of the issues that was asked in that chapter was a kind of influences on journalism. Ownership influence was one. Journalistic routines, another. Gatekeeping influences and advertiser influences. And there was a sense that those influences do affect how well they can do their work. Although the chapter says that those influences are more subtle than overt. Even the proprietorial influences are much more subtle than overt. Journalists are conscious of ethical codes. They subscribe to those ethical codes, they say. However, they also admit that there are breaches. And one of the breaches they captured in the report was one-sided reportage. They consider sometimes their stories are one-sided and also that they fail to verify, which, is a major issue considering that these days fake news abounds. And then few newsrooms, it was found, have written down policies on what most people consider as a corrupt practice, which is Soli. So there are no policies on Soli, leaving the journalists to interpret Soli the way that they like. They don't think it's a breach as such, and that is up to one's conscience whether to accept Soli or not, because some see it as transport, some see it as honorarium, and what did you say it was seen as? Appearance fees. Okay. And the last category is training and capacity building. And on that, the good news is that most training institutions are accredited by GTEC, the accreditation arm. However, there are a lot of lapsed accreditations currently. And so a lot of the training institutions have to go and renew the accreditations, and they haven't done that. The report also found that the vision and mission of many programs are not well articulated. So they lack clarity as to what it is that as a journalism or communication program they hope to achieve. Curricula for media training is a combination of the theoretical and the practical components, and almost all of them offer internship opportunities, which is good. But they found that many lecturers in accredited institutions are not meeting the GTEC requirements of either you have a PhD or an industry experience. In fact, they found a few instances in which people teaching communication courses did not come from communication backgrounds at all. So they were just, shall I say, forcing. Tells you, and I think the report, that's part of sometimes to capacity of some of journalism students, generally speaking, are graduating basic journalistics, although those skills are for students, etc., but perhaps the curricula needs a little bit more reform. What were the recommendations? Just a few key recommendations. And the ones that are generally for state actors is that there needs to be a restructuring of the regulatory institutions responsible for frequency authorization, to depoliticize them, to make them more transparent. Then also there was a recommendation that there was a need to find data-driven policy responses to media ownership, so that it will be guided by the public interest approach and to ensure that there's diversity and equity. So as it was noted, we have a lot of vibrant media, but it's more of the same. How should it be regulated so that there's more equity and there's more diversity? There's also the important issue of how to address media conglomeration and concentration. The more your media is concentrated, the less diversity there is. And so that's an important recommendation that has been put out in the report. And finally, also, there is a need to establish regulatory frameworks to safeguard the well-being and security of journalists, because one of the major issues is safety for journalists, and there are a number of frameworks that are supposed to have been put in place. We're not sure. The report says they're not sure how well the framework for the safety of journalists is working, and that has to be improved. For media owners and managers, obviously they have to improve the working conditions of journalists, because if they don't do that, they're really guaranteeing that their journalists will be co-opted, will be corrupted, etc., because they need to survive. Then they also need to provide tools for safer working environments of their journalists. Most of the newsrooms don't have safety equipment for journalists, for example. If a journalist was going to cover a demonstration, how are there physical sort of equipment for them to wear in order that they don't get hurt. And we've had journalists severely hurt, like Latif, because they didn't have safety gear. And then also media owners have been asked to enact and enforce codes of practice and policies to make the workplace safer for their journalists. And then CSOs and international partners have always been in the space supporting media development and media practice in this country. And so there are a couple of recommendations as well, that capacity building and training, especially to help media sustain, traditional legacy media to sustain itself by diversifying their revenue streams and also helping the media managers to work more optimally. And then finally, international donors and then big tech companies also have to provide more support for media sustainability. So those are some of the key findings and recommendations. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Professor Audrey Gadjepo. Please, let's give her another round of applause. Thank you very much, Prof. You would admit that indeed the report details a lot, and we all must make it a point to have a copy and read once it is duly launched. I would like to acknowledge the presence of some dignitaries who have also joined us for today's special event. Madam Shamima Muslim, she is the convener for the Alliance for Women in Media Africa. Please, if you are here, kindly give us a wave. Thank you. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, now to the main reason why we are here, the purpose for today's gathering, which is to launch the State of the Ghanaian Media Report. And to do us the honors is our very own Mr. George Sapon, who is the Executive Secretary of the National Media Commission. Let's give him a round. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I am supposed to have a very simple task of launching, but I think that some quick observations have to be made. I have always thought that one of the greatest things a school can do for itself is to produce its faculty. And when I look at the fact that my teachers are here, Prof. Gadjepo is here, Professor Kakari is here, Dr. Bonakumsin is here, and my colleague Gilbert Tieta, Dr. Gilbert Tieta is here. The students of these professors I've mentioned, and then I noticed that Dr. Abna is Gilbert's student. So, my professors, I think that whatever you do with your lives, you can be very, very sure, very, very sure they have done more than anybody could ever do in their lives. But it also excites me that the school that is producing this report is also the school that has perhaps raised some of the greatest personalities in the industry, either directly by training or by some kind of association as academics, researchers, or something. And so I'm very privileged to be here. In my own short stint as teacher given by Professor Gadjepo, one of my most colorful students happened to be Koko Anidoho. And so I always say this school will always do great things. But I want to make one very important observation. Professor Amin spoke about Ayoba as an app that exemplifies the revolution that is coming into the industry that we need to watch. When we discuss the complications of media and technology and its impact on society in Ghana, we forget one pivotal moment. And myself and Gilbert, we are happy that we're connected with it. This was when Honorable Spiogabra, as communications minister, I think the deputy was then His Excellency John Mahama, decided that they were going to change the communications environment in Ghana and put together a group of experts that included Professor Kakari and a couple of experts. The emergent product they did the COMPOL was Communications Policy Conference, COMPOL 98, and the emergent product is what defined the policy for the liberalization of the airwaves. That is what led to the liberalization of the telecoms industry, and that is what set the overall policy for the change. And when we discuss these issues, we tend to forget these pivotal moments. So with the power that you have vested in me, I want to force myself onto Honorable Spiogabra to join me to launch this report. I'm sorry for pulling this on you. As Professor Gajeko went through the report, one thing became extremely clear, that if we have doubt about what we need to improve the industry further, the evidence is in this report. And it gives us the opportunity to move further. So I believe that we are returning to the beginning ideas that you led, and we are going to continue from here. So sorry, sir, but I would want you to just say a word, and now you lead me as my senior. Both are schooled in the profession now to launch the report. So please, here you are with the microphone.
Thank you very much for this surprise. I think you say surprise honor, but somebody might think it's a surprise attack. Whichever way we look at it, it's certainly a great privilege for me to stand here before colleagues, professionals, and professors of this school that I had the privilege, like many of you, to attend. In my case, almost right after its formation. So I had the privilege of being taught by Professor Smart, the first director of the school, and Professor P.A.B. Ansah, as well as Professor Ripley. That's all in ancient history. But today, I've been called upon, as you've noticed, to join my colleague here, and all of you will launch it together. So even though I've been called to represent you, I'm calling on you to help me to launch it. And I think we've heard from Professor Gatiko's summary of the content of the report, the numerous dimensions and elements of what the authors have felt we all need to know, what the country needs to know, well, what the continent, because I'm a Pan-Africanist, so I always have to deal with the African continent, where we reside, the continent that has given us birth, and where I believe most of our aspirations should be, and of course the global community of which we are all a part. And we have also, of course, understood that globalization has brought us all together with both its positives and also many of its negatives. But on this occasion, it's my privilege, together with George, my compatriot George, who was given the original responsibility. I don't know whether the Minister of Information, I think the title that we're using now, has escaped that responsibility. And that's why we are doing this.
The Senior Minister of Information and Communication in you.
Oh, no. Say that again.
I said we have in you.
Yes.
His own senior Minister for Information and Communication.
That's true.
Yes.
I see. But I just thought we are missing him. I thought we were hoping to have him here. And maybe there was an explanation for his absence. And I wanted to just recognize him as well, that this was a role that had originally been intended for him.
That's right.
So, together, we'll hold it together. So on this occasion, with your support and your blessing, I have the honor, along with Mr. Sapong, to officially launch the State of the Ghana Media Report 2023. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. Thank you so much. But I think the president of Ghana Journalists Association, right?
Yes.
Who must have been mentioned many hours earlier, but not while I was here. So let me also recognize him among other dignitaries. And I guess the idea is to call on all our eminent dignitaries to join us here for both a group picture as well as
So there you have it. State of the Ghanaian Media Report 2023 has been launched at the University of Ghana Communications Department. Of course, if you heard the speakers at the event, they called for action, and they said that there was weaknesses in media practice in the country. So first was head of the University of Ghana Department of Communication Studies, Dr. Abene Nimwa. She said that Ghana's media needs help. The department launched that project you've seen there, the 2023 State of Ghanaian Media Report, and it says that the weaknesses needs to be addressed. You also heard the Executive Director for Media Foundation for West Africa, Suleiman Abrahima, who underscored the dangers of a country's media being under threat. He said that the strength and well-being of the democracy of Ghana is largely dependent on the health of the media. He also called on stakeholders to arise and fight threats to free media and to ensure a stable democratic governance. We also heard former Dean of the School of Communication at the University of Ghana, Audrey Gajekbo, who actually gave you details of that report. She spoke about how some media houses are not really making profit. The coming in of COVID-19 and how it's affected media, and a host of issues affecting the media in Ghana. And she called on all stakeholders to support and work together to ensure that the media comes out of these weaknesses, and that it should be strengthened, and enumerated the dangers associated with the media that is threatened. You also had former Minister of Communications, Spiu Gabra. You had George Sapong of the National Media Commission, all of them one thing or the other leading to the problems that the media face. Now the book has been launched. It's a State of the Ghanaian Media Report 2023 at the University of Ghana. Copies are available for whoever wants to read. And that'll be it for this hour. My name is Aisha Ibrahim. Stay tuned to the JoyNews channel.